Terrific. Welcome everybody, or welcome back. Heidi did an acknowledgement of country right at the beginning. I'll just repeat that. I'm on Guringai country, or Guringai lands, in northeastern Sydney. So you've just done your meeting up with some of your fellow submission buddies, so hopefully that was good to get to know a couple of other people in the group. For this session, we're going to talk about some of the key features of the proposal, and on the slide that you should be able to see, we've just given you a couple of maps. So there's the map that shows Newcastle relative to where Kurri Kurri is in the Hunter Valley, and then a zoom out to show where the proposed plant is, which is the red dot, relative to the town of Kurri Kurri around it. So it's only about sort of 2 kilometres from a decent residential zone, backs onto a block of bush and so forth. So we'll talk about the key features of the proposal for a few minutes. Siobhan will talk about why to write a submission, and then Liz will give some of the key reasons to object. So now would be a really good time to get a document open on your computer if you've got a bit of spare screen real estate, or to grab a piece of paper or maybe your phone and start jotting down some notes for your submission. And then after Liz has talked about some of those key objections, Siobhan will take you through the mechanics of how to write and lodge your submission. And we'll give you a bunch of writing time. We'll play a bit more inspirational protest music, and then have a wrap at the end where Carly will talk about some of the other actions that the Gas-Free Hunter Alliance has set up to oppose this project. So yeah, just to repeat that this event is an Australian Parents for Climate Action event in conjunction with the newly formed Gas-Free Hunter Alliance, which Carly will talk about. All right, on with the show. So why now and why here? Well, this project has come into being after the operator of the Liddell coal plant announced that it was going to close on schedule in 2023. And at that point, the government challenged the private sector to step up and fill the gap. And it also set up a cross-industry and government task force, the Liddell Task Force. And that task force found that far less than the government's claimed 1,000 megawatts of additional dispatchable energy or electricity would be needed when Liddell closed. And that task force actually listed a whole range of committed and probable energy projects that it found would be, quote unquote, more than sufficient to maintain a high level of power grid reliability as Liddell shut. Now, nevertheless, this project is still going ahead. So what's going on? Meanwhile, the Australian Energy Market Operator, which runs the electricity grid, so you might hear them referred to as AEMO, or AEMO, they found that only about 150 megawatts would be needed when Liddell closed to meet the electricity grid's reliability standard, and that well excess of that amount of new power capacity has since been announced. And while all that was going on, the New South Wales government announced the renewable energy zones and a commitment to underwrite 2 gigawatts of storage by 2030. So not necessarily all of that will be online before the Liddell closure, but there's all these projects in the winds, and all sorts of other mechanisms that the government has at its disposal to ensure grid reliability, and yet they want to build this power plant. So it's a 750 megawatt power plant, and the key thing about it is that it only runs when it needs to, and the prediction is that it may only run about 2% of the time. So when power prices start to peak because there's not enough variable supply from wind turbines or solar farms, that's when this plant would operate. But it's a tiny fraction of the year, and it only creates 10 ongoing jobs. So, you know, this mantra about gas-led recovery and things, it's not creating jobs, it's just creating a very capital-intensive projects that are an environmental disaster. So the project is administered by the New South Wales government. Well, the project is approved by the New South Wales government, and from there it goes to the Minister for the Environment, Susan Ley. So the objective at this point is to put in enough objections that it automatically triggers the IPC, the New South Wales Independent Planning Commission, to have it referred to the IPC, which creates another round of opportunities for submissions and hearings and so forth. A few other interesting things. Energy Australia recently announced a peaking gas plant near Wollongong. So why do we need that? And that one would run partly on hydrogen. And some people might say, well, what about hydrogen for the Kurri Kurri plant? And the environmental impact statement mentions the potential for the gas turbines to be fired on a certain percentage of hydrogen in the future when the technology and the infrastructure becomes more economic, but that this would require modification to the power station and the gas turbines. So they're proposing to build something that is already obsolete from a technology perspective by the time it's built, given that the New South Wales government is planning to enrich the gas network with up to 10% hydrogen by 2030. And in any case, hydrogen's a very expensive way of producing electricity, because after all, you make the hydrogen using electricity. So it already costs more than the cost of electricity. And then you've got system losses all the way through the value chain. So hydrogen's not necessarily the answer. And methane's already one of the most expensive ways of producing electricity anyway. So a lot of experts have pointed out that the age of cheap gas is over. So we had the Bass Strait conventional gas wells. They're starting to dry up, literally. And increasing the gas supply won't make gas cheaper, because coal seam gas and fracking processes and shale gas and so forth are relatively expensive ways of extracting gas, regardless of the scale at which you extract it. So we're not going to get gas prices down materially that would then keep electricity prices down. And the business case. No business case has been made public, despite requests from the federal opposition and others. And here's the real gotcha. The site currently has no gas connection. The project is dependent on a separate project, which is the Queensland Hunter Gas Pipeline, which is a privately run project. And it has gone through all the state and federal approvals, but it first applied for its development application in, I think, 2009. And so it's been sort of tied up in what you might call development hell for over a decade. And it has yet to commence construction. So for the first year or more, it will run, if it ever needs to run, on this Kurri Kurri power station would run on diesel, which is even worse for the environment than gas. So why is this happening? Well, these headlines might have something to do with it. So a chap called Jeff McCloy, who used to be the Newcastle Lord Mayor, we understand through The Guardian that he owns the land that the plant is proposed to be situated on. And as you can see there, it may be something to do with a reward to the major Liberal donor who owns the site. So that's a bit of background on why the project is completely unnecessary, why it's bad for the environment. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. But now I'm going to hand over to Siobhan to talk about why it's important that as many people as possible write a submission.
Thank you very much, David. So the fact that you're all here means that you already kind of know why you might write a submission, or you might have some inkling. But I just wanted to see a show of hands if anyone knows where the reactions button is with using the thumbs up. If this is the first time you've ever written a submission, it'd be really good to know if there's any people that have never done it before. So hands up on the picture or thumbs up, because I can't see all of you in one shot, but looks like we've got a fair few people who have never done one before. Okay, so the first thing to sort of say about that is don't worry. About a year and a half ago, or even less than that, that was me, and now I'm on the submissions writing team for Australian Parents for Climate Action. And that sort of, quick turnaround for me. I sort of joined one of these Zoom chats with Lock the Gate Alliance for the Narrabri gas project, and that kind of kick-started my submission writing career. And so, you know, why write submissions? Well, as David mentioned, this goes through the planning process for the Department of Energy and Industry. And they will then, if they get 50 unique objections, that will then get referred to the New South Wales Independent Planning Commission. So unique being in our own words, not a form letter where we all say the same thing, but, you know, as a unique person, you're objecting to the project. So that's a really good thing. You know, we've got 39 people on the chat here. That's a good way towards 50 objections already. It's easier than you might think to write a submission. So, you know, it's a great way to participate in democracy. And, you know, unless we actually voice our objections through these formal processes, we're kind of just all talking to each other. So this is a great way to participate. I've just discovered how easy it was to write submissions, and then, you know, our collective voice raising similar themes reinforces that we don't want fossil fuels in our future energy mix in Australia. We want to move away from fossil fuels. We want a clean future for our children, for our places that we love, for the people that we love. And so all of these are a great way to voice your opinion, voice your objections to this project. So thank you so much for joining us here. And, you know, as it says there, democracy is not a spectator sport. So it's a great way to get involved. So I'm going to pass over to Liz now, who's going to go over some of the key points of the project that we would use to object.
Thanks, Siobhan. So the AP4CA submissions team, we've gone through the environmental impact statement and the rest of the proposal. And as far as we can see it, there are three main reasons to object. The first reason is climate related. It's incompatible with our climate targets and with Australia's environmental laws. Second reason is economically, it makes zero sense. It's $610 million from taxpayers for something that's going to be a white elephant, doesn't create really any jobs in every year. And thirdly, it harms the air quality and it continues to disadvantage the health of families in the Hunter region, which has already been disadvantaged because of coal mining in the area. They've got really bad air quality there compared to the rest of Australia. So we'll go through these 3 points in more detail. We move on to the next slide. In terms of climate targets and laws, we believe the Hunter Power Project is in direct contravention of the New South Wales government's legal and moral obligations. Last week, there was a historic federal court ruling in the case between 8 teenagers and Minister Susan Ley. And that case established a new duty of care to protect young people from foreseeable future climate change harms. That was a world first, where the court has ordered the government to specifically protect young people from the harms of climate change. And so this really means that governments need to be more careful when they consider any major projects that are likely to contribute to climate change. According to Snowy Hydro's environmental impact statement, this project will emit approximately 500,000 tons of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere every year, despite only operating for the equivalent of about a week a year. To put it into context, that's only that's about 0.4% of New South Wales's annual emissions. It's the same amount of carbon that would be sequestered by 8.3 million trees over 10 years. And it's the same as all expected gains from New South Wales's $4.7 million food and garden waste recycling program. So that's a lot. Like, we're spending a lot of money to avoid polluting at that level, and then we're just throwing it all away for this project. Obviously, this goes against the New South Wales government's net zero plan, under which it's committed to reducing emissions by 35% by 2030. Compared to 2005. And we're also targeting net zero emissions by 2050. We don't really have long to go, considering that once emitted, greenhouse gases remain in the atmosphere for tens to hundreds of years. So the more we put in now, the harder it's going to be for us to meet our targets in future. And that's why, according to the International Energy Agency, they've said that if we want to reach net zero by 2050, we do not need any more investments in new oil, gas, and coal projects at all. The second reason that we believe that this is against New South Wales's climate targets and laws is that we're committed to the Commonwealth EPBC Act. That's designed to protect the environment, especially animals, plants, habitats, and places that Australia deems to be of national significance. That includes green turtles, for example, which are now born almost completely female because of warmer temperatures. There are 116 female turtles born for every one male turtle. Mountain pygmy possums, they're also endangered, and they hibernate for up to 7 months under the snow in alpine New South Wales. And obviously with warmer temperatures, their habitats are disappearing. The Great Barrier Reef, as we all know, is under threat. It's now listed in critical condition after successive coral bleaching events in 2016, 2017, and 2020. The International Union for Conservation of Nature last year reported that climate change was a threat in 11 of 16 Australian World Heritage Sites, and that includes the Great Barrier Reef. So obviously, if we don't stop climate change, we are not complying with the EPBC Act. We cannot protect our environment without addressing climate change. That's just not possible. According to the Australian Academy of Science, our ability to conserve Australia's unique ecosystems in a world that's 3 degrees warmer than the pre-industrial period is in doubt, and the impacts of unrestrained warming to 3 degrees Celsius and more will be severe. Failure to meet our Paris Agreement targets will have serious implications for human health and the prosperity of Australia. All the quotes are in the reference deck that has been sent to you. Our second point here is about the economic rationale. We believe that the gas-fired power station is uneconomic and unnecessary. And it's not just us, it's not just a woke climate lobby saying it, it's economists, energy industry experts, power companies, and the Australian energy market operator. AEMO, as David mentioned, expects there to only be 154 megawatts of shortfall, and that's covered by a bunch of different projects that are already in play, including 500 megawatts in Liddell, that's a new battery, 100 megawatts next to the Wandoan solar farm in Queensland, and a bunch of others. As Kerry Schott says, and she's the chair of the Australian Energy Security Board, nobody is going to build it from the private sector because it just doesn't stack up. The private sector wouldn't build a gas power station like this. It doesn't make commercial sense. The New South Wales Energy Minister agrees. He says using gas to create electricity is a really expensive way of doing it. And if you're interested in driving down prices, you'd be mad to use gas. So it's our opinion that government intervention in the energy markets just adds to private sector uncertainty, and it crowds out private investment in more appropriate solutions. And that's really bad because, according to our New South Wales electricity infrastructure roadmap, we're aiming to establish a cheaper, cleaner, and more reliable electricity sector in New South Wales. But clearly gas is not cheaper nor cleaner. Don't know about more reliable either. We've also already got measures in place to require the private sector to address any of these issues with the grid. So we've got the retailer reliability obligation, which requires power retailers to ensure that any renewable generation that they contract is firmed. And we've got demand side management contracts, which already pays large power users to reduce their demand during supply shortages. So these are already in play and they already affect the market. So there's no need for the government to step up any further and intervene in this way. Moving on to the next slide. Our final issue with it is air quality and health. In the Hunter region, air quality is already really bad compared to everywhere else in Australia. Due to its history of coal mining and coal-fired power stations, the Upper Hunter and New South Wales local air monitoring networks show pollution levels are frequently exceeding the national benchmark. Air quality in that region is not usually measured against national ambient air quality standards, and that's because it's classified as an industrial zone. So when Snowy Hydro says in its proposal that they're complying with all laws, they're talking about laws for electricity generators. And that's far worse. Like the pollution levels are far worse than everywhere else in Australia. Kurri Kurri operations will generate nitrogen oxides, that's nitrogen dioxide, which aggravates asthma, increases risks of respiratory infections and symptoms leading to hospitalization and death. It will produce carbon monoxide, which affects your ability to, organ's ability to process oxygen, so particularly the heart and brain. Studies have shown that for every increase of 1 ppm of carbon dioxide, heart failure hospitalizations or mortality rates increase by 3.25%. We've also got particulate matter, which we experience a lot of during the bushfires. We know how horrible that is. And SO2, which again is really bad for people with asthma. Importantly, Snowy Hydro's projections don't include their startup and shutdown periods, and they say that in the EIS. But that's actually a really important thing to include, because the station will only operate intermittently. It's only designed to operate for about a week in a year. So it will go on and off whenever it needs to. And when it goes on and off, gas power stations have been found to emit up to 7 times as much nitrogen dioxide when it starts up as during 1 hour of full load operation. So we should actually consider that air pollution from that time. We can't just ignore it. And of course, all this contradicts the New South Wales clean air strategy, which promises to support private sector investment in new clean energy generation and to replace aging fossil fuel powered generators as they retire in coming decades. We don't want to be replacing fossil fuel generators with new fossil fuel generators. Importantly for us as well, children and elderly people are actually at greatest risk from air pollution, and almost 2/3 of local residents in that area are families with children. So it's really important for the AP4CA members in particular to send through our concerns. That's it for me. I'm going to hand over to Siobhan.
Thank you, Liz. And I was just going to say, if anyone has questions, obviously everyone's feeling free to write them in the chat and we'll get to them as quickly as we can. There was a copy to the slide deck with all the points that we've raised here that's been posted in the chat, and a copy to references where all of these things have been supported by references and additional articles. This will all be sent out as an email pack to you tomorrow too. So if you wanted to do further reading to back up what you write in your submission, we've provided as much of what we've talked about tonight to do that. But having said that, you can just write a short submission. What we've talked about here is backed up. It's been widely reported by the industry bodies. It's been widely reported in the media. This is not unique points that we're raising, and it's fairly well supported. So, you know, time in a minute will give you some writing time, but just some things to think about. As I said, you can do a 1,000 character limit. It doesn't have to be a long submission. It's equivalent of about 3 tweets, if anyone wants to remember that fact. I suggest starting the document, starting a separate document rather than waiting till you get the submission page, even if you're going to do a short one. What this does is enable you to edit it, check it, and also have it as a record for if you do future submissions relating to other similar projects, that you can actually save yourself time and use some of those points and references again. So as I said, we provided links and sources. You can link to those, but it's not necessary, and just you know, use those to your advantage. So what to include in your submission. So start by introducing yourself, because you want to make it personal, and our key for this is to make it unique, not to copy and paste what we say, but to put it into your own words. Why you care about it. You can give examples. I'll give you an example such as, I'm a parent and I'm concerned about my children's future and I wish to object to the project because it will make climate change worse. Identify the key issues. You can use the ones we've included here, or you might have your own reasons for objecting. So identify those and then refer back to the references if you need to support those, or quotes, and refer back to the project itself. So you can refer back to the environmental impact statement, which is provided for you as well in the reference documents. Unique and in your own words. The key issues are a starting point, so include your own perspectives. So, you know, you can make it such as, you know, as a keen bushwalker, I was really devastated by the 2020 bushfires, and it really upset me to see how fossil fuels are exacerbating climate change. It makes it personal, it makes it relevant to you. And avoid using unsupported claims. So it is good to see that you've got somewhere that backs up what you want to say about the project. And we've provided a lot of references, but you really, you know, says you can use these if you feel like you want to delve in more, but you don't have to as well. And the last thing I'd just say is to be polite in your submission. It's a very frustrating issue. I know I'm very frustrated about even the project being suggested or even considered for approval, but the people receiving the submissions aren't necessarily the ones that are going to be making the approval, and they're not the ones that have put it forward. So, you know, don't shoot the messenger. And if submissions are rude or target individual public servants or ministers, they might actually be rejected. So it's just a reminder to be polite. So I think we're going to start now with a bit of reading time, but continue the questions in the chat. We'll keep answering those. I'm going to put in some suggestions about opening statements if people are not sure where to start. I'll post some of those in the chat, a few examples of how to get started. And the other documents that you might need are in the chat as well. We're going to play some music and ask questions in the chat as we go. Thank you. I think that's you, David, Mr. Music. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm still trying to work out the technology actually. So
hum along to yourselves. If you've got a document ready to go, start typing. If you feel awkward with your typing face on, feel free to turn your video off or and come back. We'll give you a shout out when we're ready, returning from that as well.
Thanks, Heidi. This is a song that we found for Angus Taylor. Okay, it's nearly 22, so we'll probably give you about another 7 or 8 minutes of writing time, and then we'll come back and Siobhan will take you through the process of lodging your submission.
It took 1,000 generations for our species to rise, but gathering and hunting was no way to get by. We yearned to burn more than dung and sticks. Then someone came along and said, hey, try like this. He opened up the ground and showed us coal and oil. Said, come liberate some carbon, it'll make your blood boil. Liberated carbon, it'll spin your wheels. Liberated carbon, it'll nuke your meals. Liberated carbon, it'll turn your night to day. Hey, hey. fossils running my TV. BP's black label burns in my SUV. You can light up the planet like a Christmas tree. Yeah, they say that things are getting hot, but hey, we've got AC. Liberated carbon, it'll spin your wheels. Liberated carbon, it'll nuke your meals. Liberated carbon, it'll turn your night to day. Hey, hey, come on and liberate some carbon, babe. It's the American way. Pump those electrons and that gasoline. No sweat or hurry, just turn on a machine. We send an army to the desert, keep this country free. Hey, hey, and to liberate some carbon, baby, for you and me. Liberated carbon, it'll spin your wheels. Liberated carbon, it'll nuke your meals. Liberated carbon, it'll turn your night to day. Hey, hey, come on and liberate some carbon, baby. Liberate some carbon, baby. Liberate some carbon, baby. It's the American way.
About another 5 minutes or so.
Something happening here. What is it? Ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop. Children, what's the sound? Everybody look what's going down. This battle lies been drawn. Who is right? Yet everybody's wrong. Young people speaking their minds, getting so much resistance from behind. I think it's time we stop. Children, what's the sound? Everybody look what's going down. What I feel, take for the heat. 1,000 people in the street, singing songs and carrying signs. Hopefully say, oh, we're for a side. I think it's time we stop. Children, what's the sound? Everybody look what's going down. Paranoia sticks deep into your life, it will creep. It starts when you're always afraid. You step on line, the man come and take you away. You better stop. Hey, what's the sound? Everybody look what's going down. Stop. Hey, what's the sound? Everybody look what's going down. Stop.
Okay, how are people going? Hopefully you're getting some good ideas down. Maybe keep writing and keep working on those submissions. And in the meantime, Siobhan, do you just want to start talking through some of the mechanics of lodging the submission?
Yeah, absolutely. So a link to this how-to document was actually sent out via email today, but I'm also going to post it now in the chat for you, as well as the So my kids are just yelling out in the background, but anyway, that's okay. That's what life and family life is like. So the planning portal link to this particular project I'm posting in the chat now, as well as the how-to document, which is the step-by-step that I've put together. The first step of creating it is to go to the planning portal and create an account by signing in. If you already have an account, then you can just go straight to the submissions page, but the step-by-step of how to create an account's there. A couple of sort of things to highlight is that you will get a verification email. You need to verify. Oh,
All right.
you need to, that's right. You need to verify that it's you. This is because obviously, you know, submitting on behalf of someone else is not what they're looking for. So they want you to verify that it's actually you that's submitting it. So check your junk mail to verify that. You'll be prompted to log back in to create, add your password and details. When you're setting it up as an individual account, the only exception to this would be someone who's setting up a government authority account. So everyone would be setting up an individual account in this instance. So the how-tos in the step-by-steps in the chat now, and it was also emailed out today if anyone gets stuck. If you'll just go to the next slide, David. Okay, so the closing date is the 9th of June. And what we're saying is if you can get it in today, it's done. It's one thing off your to-do list because I know everyone's really busy. But if you want to take a bit longer, that's your closing date. We're also recommending to, you know, maybe do it a bit earlier, and I'll get back to that in a bit. So what you do is you get a list of open projects. So that's projects that are currently on exhibition, which is shown down here in the bottom left of the slide. And if the Kurri Kurri one is not showing, sorry, the Hunter Power project is not showing there, it might be that some other projects have bumped it off down the list over to the next page. So you can just arrow across. And you say, I'm making a personal submission. Now, some people might be submitting on behalf of a group that they represent. If you're submitting on behalf of a group, only do this if you actually are the you know, verified spokesperson for that group. That's all I'd say with that one. And there's a section now which wasn't there before, I think, but it's now a reportable political donation section. Now, primarily this relates to donations of $1,000 or more, but if you think there might be something, there are some exceptions to that. So just check that those guidelines, which is part of the how-to document and also on the actual submissions page for you to verify. I might just grab that for you now, actually. The donations disclosure, just so if anyone is particularly prevalent donator, they can check whether they need to actually do a disclosure. If you do need to do a disclosure, there's a document that is within that section as well, so it's fairly easy to find. If your submission is under 1,000 characters, you can just paste it straight into the section on the page where you make a submission. Otherwise, you browse to find where you've saved it on your computer and add it as attachments for longer submissions. If you have formatting you've created, even if it's less than 1,000 characters, and you want the formatting to stay as part of the submission, then just attach that as well. So hopefully everyone's got enough to go on there with feeling confident about setting up an account and then lodging their submission. So I think that's covered that one. The next page. Does anyone, how's everyone going? Does anyone want a show of hands, or anyone wants to speak up about whether they've managed to get one done in this time, or they feel like they have what they need? Has anyone, managed to get them in already? Any keen beans? No? Not so far? Okay. Hopefully you have what you need though to keep going, and hopefully it won't take you too long. So as I said before, the 9th of June is the cutoff date, but we're saying, finish early. This way you can share it with your networks. You can say, there might be lots of people in your life who've never done a submission before, and and if they might object to this project, but unless they actually object through this process, how do people know that we object? So, say in your networks, I just submitted to, an objection to this project through this process. I found it really easy. You may even feel like sharing what you've written with your friends and family to say, if you want inspiration to take this and use it in your own words, it just gets people off on a path to writing one for themselves. So what happens after you submit? So the submissions are reviewed by the department and they're published online. You can actually nominate to make your submission anonymous, and there might be various reasons people want to do this, but declared submissions are always preferred. When you create your account, you attach your name and your address to the account, so that will automatically attach to your submission. So I do include mine on the actual document as well, but it is part of your submitting account. So if there's 50 unique objections received, then the determination is then referred to the New South Wales Independent Planning Commission for determination. Then if this happens, there will be another call for submissions for the Independent Planning Commission. So what we thought we'd do is, as you've nominated to be on this process, if a second submission process comes up, we'll email you and let you know that there's that other opportunity. Part of that submission process with the Independent Planning Commission can include a public hearing if the minister requests it. Anyone can nominate to speak at public hearing, and this is sometimes done in person, but these days it's often done in Zoom. I did 2 hearings at Independent Planning Commission hearings last year, having never done them before, and I actually found it really quite easy process to do. So that you nominate at that time when they call for submissions, there is a nomination page to speak publicly as well. So unless anyone's got any other major questions, I'm going to hand over to Carly now so she can talk about some additional actions around this project. Thanks, Carly.
Hi everyone, my name's Carly and I'm one of the co-coordinators of the Gas Free Hunter Alliance. We only formed 2 weeks ago, so I'll forgive you if you haven't heard of us yet. So this slideshow will be sent out, and I've actually put the links at the top for our Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. You can find us at Gas Free Hunter Alliance, and that's where we're going to promote any upcoming events we've got coming up. On Friday in Sydney, we're going to be having a small family-friendly action at Rob Stokes's office. So we're going to be meeting there at 10 a.m. at his electoral office, and that's in Monavale. So you can find that if you look it up on Facebook as well. If you aren't able to make it to the action on Friday, we've started the process of asking people to call and request an extension to the submissions process. I know lots of community members and groups I've spoken to have said that the 28 days just has taken them by surprise and they'd like a bit more time. So I made that phone call today. It only took a couple of minutes, and then they also said you could send an email. So that will again be in the slides, and you just say, I would like to request an extension to the submission process. Very exciting news. We've got a petition that's targeting Matt Keane as the Energy and Environment Minister. And so far we've had 3,500 signatures on that, which is grown we've only launched it 2 weeks ago. So another really exciting thing that you can share in your networks. One more thing we've got coming up is a door knocking campaign. So we're going to get a group of people together and we're going to go and survey the residents of Kurri and the people that are living close to the proposed site for the gas plant and ask them what their opinions and concerns are. So if you'd like to keep up to date with any other events we've got going on and you don't use social media, we've also got a website, which is in a link there as well. So lots of things coming up, and I'm also the Newcastle coordinator of Australian Parents for Climate Action. So that's what helped me get back involved in this campaign as well. So just one more thing is, if you would like to be a media spokesperson for this campaign, if you'd like to let Heidi know in the chat that you feel comfortable talking to the media, that would be something that would be really helpful for us. So thanks, everyone. I look forward to hearing from you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Carly. So, well, we've made it to the end of our content. So hopefully some of you have either already submitted your objection or you're about to straight after we sign off. The critical thing, as Siobhan said, is to select the objection option, so not the support option, and hit submit before the end of the 9th of June. Carly, I just noticed someone was, oh yeah, you've just shared the petitions link. Thank you, Heidi. So the petitions link is now in the chat. And the slides that you see, when you get the links to them in the email that Heidi will send out tonight or tomorrow, these are clickable links. So everything that we've talked about is there. And then Siobhan's put together a fantastic document, both in terms of the submissions process and also with heaps of links to a lot of the sources that we've been talking to today. So that's pretty much the end. I just wanted to say an enormous thanks to Siobhan and Liz, Carly, Heidi, and a few other members of the AP4CA submissions team who have helped to pull together this session. Hopefully you guys have found it useful. And if it's your first submission, then hopefully it'll be a great submission, and we'll lift the needle on this project and get enough public opposition that that it will at least be paused by the IPC and get more media attention, more people saying, well, hang on, why on earth is the government wanting to spend our hard-earned taxpayer dollars on this monstrosity of a project when there are better and cleaner and cheaper alternatives already out there. So yes,
David,
thanks once again.
Sorry, we had one request, David, which was to get a screenshot of everybody in gallery view if people are up for having a photo taken.